Before we start the presentation, let me and Sonia introduce ourselves, and then we would, then end of the presentation, we would like a roll call on who you all are and what kind of work you are doing, and if you have any queries, feel free to shoot that to me and Sonia. But after the presentation, more towards Sonia, less towards me. So with that, Sonia, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, Sharad, and thanks for that. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, because I am dialed in, so I can't see the presentation either. I was having trouble with GoMeeting. So hi, everyone. My name is Sonya Vial. I am currently in our group that looks at CO2 risk management. So as regulations change around the globe, around CO2 emissions, my group looks at how we manage the risks associated with that. I was formerly in the group with Sharad, the process evaluations group. And in that group, I did evaluations for R&D projects in biofuels and in carbon capture.
Thank you, Sonia. So my name is Sharad Kalghatgi. Like Sonia, I have to work for Shell. I'm a chemical engineer, and my role currently as of now in Shell is to look at the economics side of Shell in R&D or in projects where Shell is working, such as future technologies or existing technologies which are getting improvised, and trying to come up with, are those R&D projects or the future technologies or the existing technologies at par from an economic perspective. That means, are we commercially viable? Are we making money? But that doesn't mean that all your ideas should be making money, but they should be sustainable. So we'll talk about it with the presentation. Let's dive into the presentation. So welcome to this presentation. Whoops, let me share my screen the other way around, I think. Okay, I think somehow the slide pack is not working, so I'm just going to use a simple slideshow. I'm assuming everyone can see my slides, but if you cannot, for those of you who are online and cannot see my slides, please raise a flag by unmuting and letting us know. Otherwise, I'll assume that you can see it. Okay, first a disclaimer statement. Anything we are talking about in this presentation is purely for your knowledge and education. We in no way at Shell are saying that thou shalt do this and this is the way we do in Shell, or we are telling something that is proprietary or internal. We are just giving you an idea of what a typical economic evaluation looks like from an industry perspective. Okay, and nothing in this should be taken as is. No value, any values, anything we are terminology should not be taken as is by Shell, from Shell. Okay, the first part we'll talk about is we have kept this presentation short, and we have tried to see that we just focus on the three important aspects of economic evaluations. One is investment. The next thing we'll talk about is innovation and authenticity. And the third part we will talk about is the commercial mindset. What kind of a commercial mindset should we have for the ideas? Okay. First part, which is investment. What are the typical investments you all are going to do for these ideas? You all are going to put your time, you're going to put your resources, that means your efforts, to ensure that the ideas are workable, doable, or they can see the light at the end of the tunnel. That's what you're focusing on. So if you want to see the light at the end of the tunnel for your ideas, you have to have a clear goal and clear targets. Now both of these things are different. You can have a main goal that I want to solve the problem of hunger for the world, but that's one goal you're striving towards. The targets are, what are you going to take those small steps towards those goals. So when you have a goal, when you have an idea, split them into steps or targets, smaller targets, and try to achieve those targets as you are moving further. Okay, so being practical, being realistic is very important. Time and resource. Next part is money. Anything we want to do in this world, unfortunately, is linked to money or is valued with respect to money. We talk about Apple, the iPhone, the company that makes iPhone. It may be making the best products in the world, but we always value the company as the amount of market share it has. So all your ideas, end of the day, should have a value and should have some kind of an economic perspective. It is very important. And when you put a value against it, that's where you realize the viability of that idea. If that idea is not, just like I said, world hunger, that's a tremendously huge idea, and it will have a lot of valuation associated with it when you try to actually do an economic evaluation of it. So make clear that your ideas have money aspect to it. It's not for greed or for being overly ambitious. It's just that you need to have a value for your idea. Next part, so we spoke about investment. We'll talk about innovation and authenticity. The world in the last few years has progressed so well in terms of technology and so well in terms of resources. Your idea, someone might have thought it some time back. So always be there on the lookout if the idea that you're thinking about has anyone else tried it, and it need not be from your field. It could be a similar comparable idea for in some other field that someone else might have tried it. So try to think out of the box. Reason, because if they have tried it and if they have been successful, you can take all the pluses from that and try to do better. If they have failed in it, you can always try to go back and find out the reasons why they might have failed in it. And there is a case study further where I'll talk about this, that some of the ideas which might have been irrelevant 2, 3, 10, 15 years ago might be relevant today. So always, just because someone has failed does not mean you throw that document in the dustbin and wash your hands and move further. Might be there is a value in that idea in today's world. We'll talk about it. Next thing is, if you find an idea which is comparable, think about how your idea is different. What value are you bringing it to that idea? What is it that can be done with that idea which takes it to the next step? Third part, the authenticity of your innovation. So if you're doing something differently, which means you're innovating, how original is it? How good is it? Fourth part in innovation and authenticity, intellectual property. Be aware, this is a very important part. This is a very important point, intellectual property. Make sure that if you're taking an idea from someone and making it better, you make them aware. And also, you try to be aware of the risks that you might be getting into. The world is different today compared to what it was 10, 15 years ago in terms of intellectual property. The laws are very, very strict, so be aware of that. Fifth and the last point in innovation and authenticity, you will always have 2 to 3 major challenges in your ideas. And I have tried to just put the 2 of those challenges which most of the ideas usually face. Is you need people to convince that they need to invest money in your idea. And why is it worth it? For those of you who are in United States and watch Shark Tank, it's something like that. You go to the venture capitalists, or you come to companies like Shell, which is what you're doing, and you say why you want to invest that money. Why should a company or a person should invest money in your idea? So always be aware of that, and that's going to be your biggest challenge. You might think that it's the best idea in the world, and when you go and stand in front of someone and try to explain it to them, if they cannot connect the dots, your idea is no good. So always try to have a good business case. The next most common challenge you might have is the time it takes for an idea to become from an idea to a reality. If you look at pharmaceutical companies, they have an idea, they want to solve, they know that they want to make a molecule which can cure some kind of a disease. But just for them to come from that idea all the way till the pill, till mass producing that medicine, it takes 10 years, 15 years, or maybe 6 years. So be aware that if it's just an idea at this stage, try to make an estimation of how much time is it going to take. The world is more and more impatient, so might be someone might not like 6 years, or someone might say, oh, 6 years is very quick for this kind of an idea. So it all depends on perspectives. Be aware of it. Or it could be something else. The challenge might be something which is unique to that given idea. Might be you need a resource, natural resource like water, which might be very scarce in that idea for a given geography. I would request if someone could mute. Yeah. So be aware of that. Your ideas might have unique challenges. It's always, end of the day, what I and Sonia are going to tell you is that you have to hedge your risks, and you should be aware of what your risks are. Okay? And the last part of this topic, before we get into the case study, is, and before we go into the conclusion and case study, is the commercial mindset. Remember one thing, if you have an idea, you're innovating that idea, but it should be good enough to replicate. Your product should be able to replicate. If you're going to need a new innovation each time to make your product, then it's not a commercial idea. It's good to have in our garage, or it's good to have in our room, in our house, or in our dorm, but it's not good enough to go out there and meet the needs. The second part in commercial mindset is mass production. So you should be able to take that idea, put it in a big warehouse, and should be able to make, not warehouse, but in a big production facility, big line, and should be able to mass produce it. Third part in the commercial mindset, if there is no customer, then your idea is no good. You can mass produce it, you could replicate it, it could be very economically viable. You can buy the raw material at a very cheap price and try to sell it at a very high price and make good money out of it. But what if there is no customer? Your idea is no good. And that's why I said maybe that was the case for some of the ideas 5, 10, 15 years ago when they failed. And those ideas might be successful today because there might be an audience for it. Think about it. Fourth part in commercial mindset, compliance. Not just regulatory compliance, but environmental compliance. And it has to be a fair competition. It cannot be like you can be a dominant player and you crush all the other players. We should all get a fair playing field. So think about this. Very important point. Very, very important point. Compliance. The last part, the fifth part of the commercial mindset. You can have an idea which is a social cause, but if that idea cannot sustain itself monetary wise, it's of no good use. So that's why any idea you think of, think about sustenance. Think about what's the minimum you can generate out of it, minimum value you can generate out of it, so that that value can be put back into the system to keep the idea running. So it's profitability for sustenance. Think about it from that perspective. Okay, so these were the three things we wanted you all to think when you're thinking of your idea. Number one, investment. So it's time, your resource, your money. Second part is about innovation, okay, and authenticity. Third part is about commercial mindset. Let's take a small case study, okay. Now, everywhere in the world, everyone is discovering shale gas, natural gas, which is mostly methane. Now, in a chemicals business or in a refining business, if you can take that methane and partially oxidize it, you can make synthesis gas, which is carbon monoxide plus hydrogen. That's called as a syngas reaction. Now this syngas is a raw material for many things. You can make a lot of things, a lot of chemicals out of this syngas. That's the way the boom is occurring. That's why the boom of natural gas is going to make more and more companies think about gas to liquids. So once they make syngas, they can make anything out of it, which can be a liquid, gasoline, ethylene, or it could be propylene, or it could be a chemical component. Okay, now let's take that example. Now this is just a generic numbers I have put in front of you, and I have put the numbers in terms of oil and gas scale. So we are not looking at 1 kilogram, we are not looking at 1 pound, we are looking at 10 million pounds of syngas production per year, which is about 450 kilotons per year. Okay, now I'm going to open a spreadsheet, and I'm really sorry for Francisco and some of the people who are listening to us but cannot see, but I'll try to see that I can explain you most part of what I'm trying to get the message through. And I'm again assuming all of you can see this spreadsheet. I've just created a generic spreadsheet, and in this spreadsheet what I've done is I've put 10 million pounds of natural gas. I'm sorry, I meant 10 million pounds of natural gas is taken, not 10 million pounds of syngas is made. I am going to use a raw material which is going to be 10 million pounds per year used, which is about 450,000 tons per annum. And say I'm going to invest about $1 billion, $100 million in this, to put the plant together, to put the manufacturing unit together to make syngas. Now, I know the natural gas prices in United States have risen to $5 per million BTU. That's the unit. But I'm going to use $3 per million BTUs because that's what was the that is what was the natural gas price in United States on an average for a good part of last year. It might be $3.50, we might say that, but I'm not into those specific numbers. I just want to explain this case study. So let's assume that my natural gas, which is my raw material, I'm going to purchase it at $3 per million BTUs. And I know by stoichiometry how much natural gas am I going to convert into syngas. And in this case, I know that I'm going to use 10 million pounds of syngas per year. So I convert it into dollars, $1 million per year, and then I convert it into another unit, which is easy for someone like me and Sonya to comprehend. I'm going to say that it's going to cost me per ton about $1,361 per ton of natural gas. It's going to cost me that much for purchasing. And then I'm going to think about what is going to be my co-product, and one of my co-product might be, if I don't convert 100% into carbon monoxide and hydrogen, I might make CO2, which is a bad thing for the environment. We all know that, except for a few politicians around the world. The rest of the world knows that CO2 is bad for our atmosphere. So we take that CO2, and I'm sorry, it should not be carbon monoxide, it should be carbon dioxide, I'm sorry. So that's one of the co-products, and it has a negative value attached to it. I've just given some negative value to it, and the number seems to be a very small number, so that's why it's not showed up over here compared to that. And it adds some money on to the cost of production, which is $1,361 per ton. Okay, And I'm going to use a few things like I'm going to use utilities, I'm going to use water, I'm going to use electricity, I'm going to use a few other things to keep this manufacturing unit running. And then there will be some direct costs, which would be like costs associated with people who are working on the unit. Their salaries have to be paid. People around, so we call them direct costs. Then there are going to be some costs which are associated with maintaining the pieces of equipment that are going to run this unit, periodic maintenance checks. So there is going to be a cost associated with that. There is going to be a cost associated with some unknowns, some contingencies. So we add up all those minor costs, and in the end we come up with a value which is going to be $1,383 per ton of LNG. So that's going to be my cost when I invest $1 billion, and I have this other costs, variable costs like the salaries, the maintenance, the contingencies, and certain corporate costs, which is going to, when I equate them or when I normalize them to per ton of LNG, I'm going to get it at $1,383 per ton of LNG. Now, coming back to one of the points I made earlier, reiterating that point. If I have to sell syngas, if I have to keep my business running sustainable, I need to have the syngas price at $1,000. I have to sell it at $1,383 per ton, because whatever money I'm putting in the system is what I need to sell to sustain the system. Now, I'm not thinking about profitability. We are not thinking about making money. So that is again reiterating that idea that what's going to be the cost of production. Okay, so this is the small example I wanted to give. Why am I talking about it? Well, if you look at the current market price of syngas, well, it's around $300 per ton of natural gas. And if I put it in the market, it's $1,383 per ton of natural gas. Are we going to make profits? No, we are in a loss. So this is not a sustainable idea. Might be in future when the natural gas prices go through the roof, this might be a sustainable idea. So it's all about thinking from those perspectives. It's all about thinking, how am I going to sustain the idea from an economics perspective? Okay. Before I go to the question and answers, this is the summary. So for an idea to be successful, it has to be self-sustaining and market demand based. And the two visual examples I have put for every one of you is Segway. This is a motorless vehicle where you can hop onto it and you can accelerate it and keep going around. And the other example is an iPhone. Both these products, when they came out, there was a lot of market buzz generated. But Segway, for some reason, never made it to the league of iPhone. The iPhone was a game changer in the market. So that's why think of those two ideas as something you can associate your idea with. Okay? That's all I had to say. Sonia, you want to add something?
Hi, Sharad. So I've had to mute Sonya just because she's dialed in with a phone. I couldn't mute individual participants individually. So I'll unmute everyone now, and I'll get Sonya to come on the line. Okay.
No, Sharad, thanks for that example. I thought that was a really good demonstration of how you do an evaluation. One of the questions that came up last time is how do you, some of the projects that you all are working on, there's really a lot of noise on the line, I'm sorry. But Sharad, maybe you mute us all again, Karen, and Sharad can just talk about the question we got last time about how do you value things that charity type of projects. So projects that benefit people but don't necessarily have monetary value.
Okay, thanks for that, Sonya.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
I
if
had
you
to
don't
mute
have a,
everyone.
if you have, it's like,
Sorry,
yeah.
Sharad, you're
So
unmuted
can we?
now, so you can go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So Sonia brought up a good point, because during our one of the last webinars we were asked a question, and I'm again repeating what Sonia said, is so if you have an idea which is like providing water to villages or places where there is not adequate water, that idea is not a sustainable, we cannot put any value to it in terms of money. But again, you can always think about it from sustenance viewpoint, that what is it that you can do to self-sustain that idea. So we are not asking here at Shell you to make money, but we are telling you that if you have an idea, there is a limit to how much funding can be provided. Most of the ideas eventually become self-sustaining. And I'm not talking about ideas related to medicines, related to humanitarian efforts, but I'm talking about ideas where you're trying to make changes in people's lives. Okay?
Great, thank you very much, Sharad. Okay, so should we now just turn this over to the Q&A session? Everyone on the call is able to ask questions to Sharad. What you need to do is just type in any question in the chat function of this GoToMeeting software, and then we can just answer it on the call. So there are no questions in there at the moment, so please just type in anything that you want answered. Okay, Sharad, we've got a couple of questions on the line now. So are you able to see the chat function yourself, or do you want me to read them out to you? I'm happy to read them out if you like.
Yeah, please, can you?
Okay, the first question is from TSI. Hi, Sharad, what would usually be the scale of investment needed for projects?
Can you just repeat that question again, please?
Sure. What would usually be the scale of investment needed for projects?
Well, it depends on the project. It depends on how big the idea is. It depends also on how big is dependent on what the market demand is. So if it's going to cater to 2 billion people or even 200 million people, then it's a big idea. You need a lot of things in place to get that idea on the ground and keep going. So it depends on what you're saying. So if you're looking at a scale of oil and gas, you're talking a minimum in terms of $1 to $20 billion. Yeah.
Okay, because
So
TSI...
and if you're looking at a pharmaceutical company, you're looking at a 200 to $3-4 billion.
All right, because TSI says, for example, one of the Shell Game Changer projects. I'm not sure if you've got any oversight on that.
Yeah, I do. So for a game changer, again, if you could just tell me what the idea you're thinking about is, then we can probably try to have a discussion around the size of the project.
Okay, thanks for that, Sharad. TSI, if you want to give a bit more clarification on what kind of project, then perhaps Sharad can give you a more definitive answer.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? Please put them into the chat box. Okay, TSI has already wrote a response saying, for example, a large water storage system.
Yeah. So large water source system. So it's a big project. You can think about it in terms of if you're going to provide water to a lot of people, then you're thinking in terms of hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah, I'm just putting a finger at one place and saying hundreds of millions of dollars.
Okay, so a large investment.
Yeah, and it also depends on the location. Yeah, it's a large investment. And I think, Sonia, you want to add something. Go ahead.
If I want,
So can
sorry,
we unmute Sonia?
I've had to mute Sonya because she's dialed in. I can't unmute her separately without
I know.
unmuting everyone else. So, okay, bear with me. I'm just going to unmute everyone, but then I'm going to mute everyone again. Okay, just say with me, please. And please.
Sonia, go ahead. Oh, she cannot talk, I think.
We don't have access
Yeah, sorry.
We have some questions here.
Karen, go ahead and mute everybody back.
Okay, I've muted everyone I can. So if there's anyone else on the call that's not muted, please mute yourself. Sonia, if you want to
How do we
go
ask questions?
Okay, sorry about that, everyone. It's just the line was a bit too noisy for everyone, so I don't think I can get Sonia to speak. Sorry, Sharad, I can't unmute Sonia because she's dialed in.
Okay.
Too much feedback. So
Yes.
if you can message her and get any answers from her, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So I am on a separate chat box with Sonia, and she's just written. So she had too much of noise, so we couldn't hear what she was trying to say. But this is what she says, that she says that, which is true, for the project where you're going to provide water to a community, if it also varies, the amount also varies about where it is built, where that project is being built, not just geography, but how far. I mean, those are the small nitty-gritties you have to be aware of. I think that's what she's trying to imply. Yes,
okay, great.
she said yes.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have one from Vibe. The idea which we're working on have very few pilot projects going on around, so how will we be able to analyze the economics associated with it?
Good question, Vaibhav. So if you look, none of the ideas or most of the R&D work that takes place, there is a very good chance that you can put a value to it. But at least you can start it from the lab scale or the mini scale you're looking at. So if you have an idea, put down how much you're going to spend on the raw materials for that idea and things like that. Start from a small scale, but at least give some valuation to it, to see to it that you're evaluating it from an economics perspective to make sense and see that it is indeed an idea that's not going to, that it might not make money now or it might not sustain itself now, but it's something that you should have in place as a check mark, because end of the day we deal in a world where, as I said, your value has to be sustainable. So start from a small scale. Think about all the costs. It's like doing your budgeting every month. This is the money I have, and these are the things I need. And then you start thinking about, okay, if my things I need are going to be more than the money I have, how can I balance it? So it's all about that. Think from that perspective. This is your idea, and this is what you want to make out of it. There are going to be some fixed inputs, fixed outputs.
Great, thanks for that answer. Okay, we've got a question from Shubham. I have a question. I am making my project on a real scale model, but the funding required is more. How to approach to the companies to fund the project, as this is a huge task, getting funding for the project?
All I would say is all the best. To be frank with you, forums like this provide your credibility. So keep working hard on forums like this. It's just that your intentions and your keenness should also match with the companies or the person of interest, and then you can look at viability. But don't, we all think when we have an idea that it's going to be the best idea in the world. Give yourself some time to think.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
it's all
you.
about luck.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, just a follow-up to that. Shubham asked, is there a few tips on how to approach companies for that funding?
All I can say is that there are a few websites in this world where there are venture capitalists. I mean, they're just like Googling. But if you're thinking of shell specific, or if you're thinking about your idea, forums like this are a good place. So talk to your mentor, talk to them, see where you can see this idea going further, and it's all about having a free and frank discussion. You never know.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to have a look for the next question.
Okay.
Okay, this one's from Chitrath. The idea I have can be done experimentally, but given the deadline of the stage 2, I might not be able to complete it by then. How do I present my entry then?
Very good question. So if you have so now you know that this is one of those small targets in the big goal. But it's about doing an experiment, seeing whether it works or not, and then coming back and saying, hey, this is what I'm getting and this is the yields I have. Might not be practicable at this point of time. If you don't have enough time, talk to your mentor, ask about what you can do from an experimentation viewpoint to see if it can be done faster. Look, or talk to someone in your university or in your people in and around you about design of experiments or similar experiments, or try to do some literature search on similar kind of reactions or similar kind of things to see where comparably they are in terms of yields and in terms of products or in terms of kinetics of the reaction, and try to apply that if you can in the short term. But that does not mean that is your answer. You need to still do your experiments.
Great, thank you for that answer. Okay, and that's another follow-up to that last question. I can present simulated results, however, will that suffice?
Yes, of course. Yes, you can. You can present simulated results, but you need to tell the values, like kinetic values, where you have taken it from, so that there is enough backing. So you need to have references to back your simulated results.
Okay, and there's just one more question from Chitrath. I think I might be able to respond to this one. You ask, if possible, can I update my entry with my experimental results? The deadline of stage 2 is the 31st of March, so if you can only present simulated results, like as Sharad just said, that's definitely fine. That will, back up your proposal. Once you've submitted your entry, you can't update it with any kind of, experimental results. Thank you. All right, are there any more questions? Feel free to pop in any questions in the chat functionality and Sharad can answer them for you. And apologies for overrunning on time. We did start about 20 minutes later just due to technical difficulties. So Sharad, if you're able to stay online for another 5 minutes just to see if there's any more questions coming through, is that okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yes, I'm okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sharad, we've got another question from Vial. We are working on a technology related to oil and gas industry, but we don't know how to budget it commercially as it is a pilot project.
Yeah. So that's kind of, I think, a very generic question. If you want to budget it, I'm assuming that when you say budget, you mean costs associated with capital required to have that technology in a pilot plant or in a manufacturing unit. It is very much possible. Think about the pieces of equipment you will need in that pilot plant. It could be vessels, it could be pumps, it could be condensers. You just Google online to say, okay, for this kind of a scale, this kind of a volume, what's a typical range? And most of these values can be in terms of amount of kilograms or pounds of steel, amount dollars costing amount of. So it could be like, if it's steel, I'm just going to put a number, say $400 per kilogram of steel. I know that's not that high. It could be $400 per ton of steel. Then what you need to do is you need to say, okay, how much steel am I going to have in my unit in terms of vessels, in terms of pipings. Just start with a number. Just start with a number, and then put that cost times 400. Put that number with 400 and say that's going to be my initial cost of putting things on the ground, steel on the ground. And then also think about how much is a pump going to cost for displacement capacity of so and so, or condenser, what's a typical condenser that's going to cost. So you add these bits and pieces of the entire pilot plant one by one you can think of, and then you will end up with a number. You can Google for most of the cases what's going to be their latest pricing for that given capacities, and you end up with a number, and then you just come up with a generic ballpark as I showed in my spreadsheet. I'm just going to say 2% is going to be, and again, don't take it as shell cost. It's just a number I'm throwing out. It could be through 2% for of that total number for paying out salaries to people, or it could be 2% of maintaining it, and add those things and you would end up with a final number. That's going to be your total cost for the project in pilot plant.
Thank you for that. Okay, we've got another question. This one is from Joe. Hi there. My project is related to food. What is your opinion on this important resource and its value in the future? Is it an area that will have as much impact to the world as energy does in the future and from an economic point of view?
Of course, because remember that all these products come from a natural resource, right? And we know that natural resources such as cocoa or wheat or you name it, all these are traded globally. So there is a value, there is a pricing associated with it. Food is as important to us as water. Okay, so yes, it is a fantastic idea, and I think I know what you're trying to do over there, because I've seen that idea, and I'm guessing it's that idea you're talking about, Joe. So yes, it is important.
Great, thanks for that answer. Okay, we've got a question from Vibhav. Is the costing to be in dollars? I'm assuming this is in related to your project proposal to submit to Shell Ideas360. The costing can be done in any kind of currency you wish, but yeah, dollars, pounds, anything global is fine. Thank you, Vibhav. Okay, we've got a question from Rohan Sharad. His question is, the idea we are working on has only been part of a laboratory. How do you suggest we give a commercial value to it?
As I mentioned earlier, any idea has to start in a laboratory or a small scale or in an imagination. Take that idea, and as I said, if you could think about that just at that lab scale, what are the resources you are using in the lab, and put a value to those resources. It could be a round bottom flask, it could be a condenser, it could be anything in that laboratory, it could be the utilities in that laboratory. Try to think from that perspective. Try to put value to those things from that perspective, and say, and look also at the raw material cost. How much are the raw materials going to be? If you're using a base, what's that base, what does that base cost? And finally, when you get that product out, think about what's going to be the product cost. And then you need to do the simple game of A minus B to get out, okay, this is going to be my value, and I'm in a loss. Say if you come up with a number which is in negative, doesn't mean you should stop that idea. All ideas initially have a negative number to it. Most of them, not all, I'm sorry. But that doesn't mean you should stop at it. You should go to the next stage, because might be when the economy of scales comes, that means you're starting at say 1 gram, and when you move to 1,000 kilograms, definitely a lot of costs come down immediately, because some of the raw materials you're using, now you're thinking them not at a laboratory scale, which is very costly, to a commercial scale, which is less costly. And suddenly the minus value starts moving more towards 0. So don't give up. Keep doing it. And in Shell, we are not looking at, oh, if this idea is negative, doesn't mean we drop it. It's just that the economy of scales is making it sometimes into the negative numbers.
Great, thank you. Okay, we've got 5 minutes left on this call, so we might just have time for a few more questions. The next one we have here is from ABD. My project is solar Stirling engine. I estimate that the components cost, I've estimated the components cost. The problem is that the market changes the price all the time and it is not stable. So how can I estimate the cost exactly, or should I put the cost within range?
Good question again. So ABD, what I suggest to you is look at the numbers for the last 1 year or last 2 years and come up with a median and say this is going to be my median number, just like I was explaining in the natural gas pricing case. Natural gas usually has a swing, is cyclical. When the winter months come, the natural gas prices go up because there is a lot of demand, and when the temperatures in the geographies are hot, the natural gas prices tend to come down. So if you look at that cycle, I cannot just put one number to that cycle. Because it's changing. So what I do is I will think about having a generic median number and a weighted average number, and I would say that's the number I'm going to start with.
Okay, thanks for answering that question. We have 5 minutes left, so if anyone else wants to put in any additional questions to Sharad in the chat function of the software, feel free. Oh, okay, we've got one already. Sharad, this one is from Subham. My project includes energy from the sun and using it efficiently in the farm for irrigation, as well as providing electricity. Will it be possible to transfer the generated energy from sun to a grid system when the farmer is not utilizing it? Will the grid accept the power from a multiple small system?
Of course, you can do that. Or this is what most of the small-scale solar energy generators do. They try to take that power and store it in batteries. So they charge their batteries, and when you have days or when you need the power at night in the evenings, you can run those batteries. So you can think about it from that perspective as well. If you have a larger scale, then yes, you can put it into the grid.
Great, thank you. Okay, we have about 2 more minutes left on this call, so any more questions, feel free to put it into the chat box. Thank you. All right, everyone, it seems like no one else has any more questions, so we'll wrap up this webinar now. Thank you for bearing with us, and sorry about those technical difficulties we had at the start. Hopefully you found this presentation interesting and helpful towards the development of your Stage 2 proposal. Thank you, Sharad, for staying on the line and for answering everyone's questions. Sonya had to leave a little bit early, so we'll thank her as well.
Yeah, thank you. And if you have any further questions or any queries, feel free to connect to us through your mentors. Okay?
Yes, great.
You all have a wonderful day, evening,
thank you.
Whichever part of the world you are. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Sharad, and thank you for all your knowledge, and thank you to everyone else on the call. Okay, bye.